I'm not sure that there's anything that creates more uncertainty than AI. The challenge with AI is that it's non-deterministic. Log every single thing that your AI agent is doing. I tell my team to just experiment all the time. I think it's a great question. I mean, I think AGI...
Hello everyone, welcome to Inference by Turing Post. My name is Ksenia, and joining me today is Anneka Gupta, Chief Product Officer at Rubrik, and her team is rethinking what security means in the age of autonomous agentic systems. Hi Anneka, and welcome.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
When I was thinking about our conversation today, I wanted to set a theme, and the theme is designing for uncertainty. So let me form it into a question. We used to think of security more of after a crash, right? Restore, patch, move on. And now we're in a different situation. We in the world before a crash, where AI systems, can cause one on its own. So in this world, what does failure even mean when the system can create it by itself?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about uncertainty. I'm not sure that there's anything that creates more uncertainty than AI today. Obviously, there's uncertainty about what the future of AI looks like. From a cybersecurity front, there's a lot of questions about, what are the ways AI is already being used by cyber attackers? What does that mean? But then when we think about organizations themselves and their adoption of AI, the challenge with AI is that it's non-deterministic. And the challenge with AI agents is that they are programmed to go execute an outcome without regard to what are the ways that they are going to the changes that they're actually going to make to achieve that outcome. And so when you talk about the negative consequences, what are the risks that we need to be thinking about proactively as we're deploying AI agents more at scale? One is, how do I make sure that my AI agents don't create unintended downtime for my applications? We're worried about humans creating unintended downtime for applications. AI agents are on steroids. There are going to be many more of them. They're going to be taking actions a lot faster, and again, in a very non-deterministic and maybe unpredictable way. And that can lead to downtime of your application if they do something like drop a database table or make some change that's really difficult to reverse. So I think that's part of the unpredictability that is inserted even more so with AI agents. Is kind of taking the human problem and putting it on steroids.
I just want to see your thinking process when you think about this uncertainty and failures. What does it mean? How do you define control, error, and recovery in this new era?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about solving for these problems, the first step is visibility. So how can you actually monitor, get visibility into what is happening? What AI agents do you have running? What are the actions they're taking? What applications do they have access to? Having that visibility is step one of helping solve for this problem. And then the next step is, well, how do you govern then what these AI agents are doing? What are the guardrails that you're putting on these agents to both control for what are the actions that they can take and what they can access, as well as what are the guardrails around the outcomes and the quality of those outcomes as well. And then the third piece is that, with anything, you have to anticipate that something is going to go wrong. You're not going to set the guardrails perfectly and be able to anticipate every situation ahead of time. And so what do you do when an AI agent inevitably makes a mistake, and how do you actually end up reversing those mistakes? So that's the thinking that we're seeing, and as we're talking to our customers, and our own thinking is evolving around what do you really need to be solving for, what are the problems and jobs to be done in order to have more resilience for your organization, even while accelerating your AI adoption.
I want to make it really practical for the viewers and readers. Can you give, let's say, a simple set of rules, 3-5 rules that every organization needs to think about when they, deploy agents?
Yeah, I think step number one is really figuring out, first of all, what is the outcome and what are you trying to solve for with your agents? That is just, practically speaking, we can talk about AI agents, but they need to be solving specific use cases and having an idea of what is that use case? What's the ROI that you're trying to drive? What's the productivity? The second question I would ask is, what are the tools and infrastructures you're going to use to set up that agent. There's a lot of different options out there about different kinds of tools and technology. It depends on if you have an engineer that's building an agent or a non-technical user. So really understanding what that tech stack is going to look like. If you're an individual or if you're an organization, how does that fit into then the overall technology strategy of your organization? I think step number 3 then starts getting into kind of this proactive measurement proactive work to make sure that your AI agents are set up properly. How are you going to build that visibility into what AI agents are running? What are they doing in the system? What do they have access to? Who within your organization is using these AI agents? Like that kind of observability piece and monitoring piece is really important. And then I think the questions after that are, what are you going to do to manage your agents on an ongoing basis? So how are you going to go back and make sure you're looking at what they're actually doing and then creating new rules? You're going to have some rules that you're going to create around what's sanctioned and unsanctioned behaviors. You have to create those rules. And then how do you look at those on an ongoing basis and update those rules based on what you're actually seeing? And that way, continuously improving the way that your AI agents are running to make sure that, if they do end up doing an action that you don't like, how do you prevent that in the future? And then the last but not least piece is like, okay, what are you going to do? What is the technology, playbook, process you're going to do when your AI agents inevitably make a mistake? How are you going to recover from that?
Well, you talk a lot about observability, visibility, hardest word, interpretability. In machine learning, that was one of the hardest problems. Now with uncertainty, what are the main bottlenecks? How do you deal with them?
There is a lot of uncertainty. And I think there is, again, an even greater amount of unpredictability than in the traditional machine learning world that we're seeing with AI agents. A lot of what you can do very practically is log every single thing that your AI agent is doing. And if you have that, and you're not going to be perfect on day one of saying, hey, I've set up my rules and everything properly. But if you're logging everything that's happening, you can go back, you can assess for quality challenges, like is this actually producing the results that I think it should be producing? And you can look at the kind of security posture, just the overall posture of your AI agents and say, are these activities that I want to allow or not? And at the end of the day, it's like, I think a very important thing is saying like, hey, how am I building these guardrails on a continuous basis of what's allowed and what's not? And that's both from, again, a quality and getting the ROI that you're looking for your use cases, whether that's external or internal to your own employees too. And the second piece is being able to monitor this in case your AI agents do end up doing something malicious, because maybe you have an attacker that gets into your organization and starts using them maliciously, or you have unintended consequences of an AI agent taking actions that actually increases your data exposure risk or other kinds of security risks.
Is it some sort of an additional agent that does this logging? How do you deal with that?
So I think one is looking at so there's a call that's happening between the agent and the model itself, right? So you're making some call to a model. The model is coming back with a set of next steps to go do. That agent is typically going to go hit some kind of MCP server. That MCP server is also going to take some actions, and understanding what's actually happening behind the scenes there is super important as well. And then again, this can happen in cycles. You could have multiple, you could have agents talking to agents, you could have a lot going on. But if you actually know all of those model calls that are happening, both the input that's being put in, the prompt that's being put in, and the result that's coming back, and as well as what's happening behind the scenes with the MCP server when a specific call is being made, and you're able to string all of that together, then that is really going to give you a very solid picture of what's happening behind the scenes. Now, this is easier said than done, right? Because often this is not one system. These are multiple systems. Your MCP server might be connected to your email. It might be connected to your Slack. It might be connected to your CRM. And all of these systems are going to be doing various things behind the scenes. So you have to be able to create a holistic view that's really understanding what's happening at every layer, which requires multiple entry points in terms of creating that monitoring, multiple calls to different kinds of APIs that are going to have that that logging, and then being able to go back and construct from all of these various logs what is actually the path that was taken, what actually happened in sequence, and how do you build that timeline. So it's not an easy problem to solve. And I think that over time, though, it's like we will continue to evolve. Like all the third-party tools will continue to evolve to provide that visibility. And then it's incumbent upon various vendors to really be able to string that together into a way that's actually actionable for a business or technical user, because we can't expect people to wade through 50 different logs and try to correlate these things on their own. That's actually where we failed quite a bit in security historically, is like it's just too many signals and you can't correlate them together into an attack timeline. And it's similar with agents. Like you need to understand the agent action timeline.
But you can build an agent for that.
You can build an agent for that, but you have to get access to the underlying data. Of course, yeah, I totally believe that building the timeline is easier today than ever before because of agentic AI, but getting access to the data and being able to do that well and interpret the logs, there's still work that needs to be done. It's not like if you just put a out-of-the-box agent on top of logs, it's going to magically give you an answer. All of this is iterative. All of this takes an understanding, fundamental understanding somewhere of the underlying data to be able to pull that together.
If we talk about people who building this, and your experience is very varied from SaaS era now to the autonomous era, what mental shift it requires on the engineers, from the product teams to think and solve these questions?
I love this question because often what I talk about even internally is that the biggest barrier is the mental shift that everyone needs to make in this era, because it's a very different, yes, AI is technology, but it operates very differently. And we're very used to saying, okay, we write code and we know the code is deterministic. We know what is going to happen. Or we program automation into our internal systems, and it's very clear that these are the 5 steps that are going to happen every single time. And when we think about AI, then it's actually about like, well, how do you define what the outcome is that you're looking for? And how do you determine your evals? And then it's about speed of experimentation, because no one can tell you, just right by looking at something that, hey, by adding this data source, we're going to improve the quality. Or by, being able to connect these different tools together, this is going to really change the outcome that we can drive. You just have to try things and you have to experiment quickly. And the faster you can experiment within having like a very clearly defined outcome and very clearly defined evals, that's going to make or break your ability to get, more use cases out there and to deliver them with a high enough quality and efficacy. And that is so, so different than how so many of us operate in our day to day. And it's so different, especially when we think about building technology and building technology first with an outcome and evals versus thinking about technology as kind of a set of steps or workflows or tools.
How do you even approach this root cause analysis when it's so probabilistic?
It's hard. No one has a perfect answer for this. And obviously root cause analysis, like what are you doing the root cause on even? It's not even like there's traditional bugs. Like there's some output that's coming out and like, is that a bad output or a good output? Is that, there's so much that is, you look at it as a human, you're like, oh, I can, and you're a knowledgeable expert. You can be like, yes, this is good and bad, but how do you explain that in a much more detailed way? It's very difficult to do. It is a really tough problem. And I think if it were easy, I think we would all be seeing like a massive amount of AI adoption, especially in larger enterprises where things are much more complex. But right now, all of these things are still being figured out. We're trying to learn and no one has a perfect answer of how to do it. No one has a perfect clarity around, hey, I have this use case. Is this something that is truly a use case I will actually be able to solve well today? Or do I need to wait for the technology to advance? And of course, the technology advancements and model advancements are happening so fast that it's like something that works today or doesn't work today could work 6 months from now and be great. It's just hard to predict.
How do you change this mental shift with your team?
I tell my team to just experiment all the time. I practice that. I try to practice that visibly as well. It's like, even in my personal life, it's like every single thing, can I try AI first? Fine. Some of the time for some use cases, it doesn't work well at all. And for other use cases, it works great. And what I found is that like that changes month to month, and that might change based on the model that I'm using as well. So I think taking that mindset, both like in your personal life, it's easier because you can use more tools. In your work environment, you might be limited in the set of tools, but whatever is available to you, just try things and think about how, like, I have a problem I need to solve. Like, is there a way that AI could help me? Let me try it and see where I land. And I think it's that experimentation, it's a usage of like really being hands-on every day that gives you the intuition about what works and not. Because intuition is, I believe, very important. It's very important in developing products. It's very important in developing AI agents to solve various problems within your own organization or within your product portfolio for your customers. But that intuition can't be built without like very, very hands-on experience and just building the reps and doing that.
The majority of times I hear from people that they are afraid of AI is when they never used it. So I think exactly building this intuition helps to understand and think about security as well, right?
Absolutely.
But there is a tension. Like if you do it personally, it's much easier. You can control many things. If you do it for an enterprise or a company, there is always the tension between like letting agents act and then keeping them safe. So how do you think about these design boundaries that don't paralyze innovation and don't stop companies from experimenting?
This is a great question. So most large enterprises have some kind of AI governance committee or AI committee. Maybe it's not called governance, but they play a governance role in addition to hopefully helping with the acceleration of adoption of AI within these enterprises. And I think one of the bottlenecks that often comes up is, hey, I'm thinking about this AI use case. It might be an external vendor I want to bring in. It might be something I want to build using various agent builders internally in my company, or a combination of both. A lot of the bottleneck occurs because there's a huge concern around, what's going to happen? Like, what are these systems, what are these technologies, what do these AI agents have access to? And what could they potentially do with this data? And that could be things like, okay, in coding, are they going to insert vulnerabilities into my code that I need to be really thoughtful of, or anything that might be a real concern to the security posture of my company or like customer trust? It could be things like, hey, I'm worried about that there might be unintended data exposure. In large enterprises, usually you need real segmentation of data between customers. You don't want one customer seeing someone else's data. You start opening things up with AI agents and the boundaries get blurred. Like, how do you create those guardrails? Internally with employees, how do you make sure that, like, okay, I might be sitting in the product organization, I shouldn't have access to HR data, especially for another organization. Those are the concerns that come up in these meetings when, the AI committees are trying to evaluate both, like, what is the risk? And then, of course, there's a question about the efficacy as well, because a lot of AI projects get stuck in prototyping and never make it to production, something like somewhere between 70 and 90%, depending on whose data you look at. And a lot of that is because the efficacy isn't there too. So you have to have both efficacy and then what is the kind of risk that you're taking. And if you're able to deliver efficacy with greater guardrails that protect around the data access and governance piece of it, what do these AI agents have access to and what kind of actions are able to take? I think then is like when you can unlock faster innovation. But it's both things. It's like, how do you actually really get that efficacy? And then how do you have the governance guardrails that allow you to say, okay, actually, I'm ready to move faster.
How often do you change your company plans depending on this uncertainty in the companies, uncertainty with their behavior, and with this super fast race of models and all the developments?
Well, I think like for us, like for me in product development, where we're developing products for our external customers, the plans around AI are changing constantly, because while we are anchored on the problem at Rubrik of how do we accelerate AI adoption for large enterprises and large, highly regulated enterprises often as well. So we know what the problem space is. The solution space is like, and the possibilities of these solutions, because the technology is changing, because people haven't even centralized on a single stack yet of what their layers are going to look like for different kinds of AI agents. It's changing so fast. So we have to be really responsive to what are we seeing when we're talking to our customers, when we're putting betas out there, what's working, what's not, and how is the landscape changing. So it feels like, while the high level strategy isn't changing every week because we know what problems we're trying to go solve, how we're thinking about solving those problems is changing quite a bit. And I think the best thing is if for every organization who's building AI products for external customers is, can you dog food your solutions first? And we are doing that. And I think you learn so much from just trying it. And you may not be your ideal customer profile, but that's okay. You will learn a lot by being able to try it yourself and see how it works in the way that your company operates and for the kind of personas within your organization that might be using these products. Having a strong point of view on the problem, but being flexible on the solution, and then iterating quickly using real scenarios internally and externally with customers is the best way to kind of continue to evolve with so much uncertainty in this space.
Can you just name me the list of the problems that you're solving?
We have a product that we launched called Rubrik Agent Cloud. And the problems that we're really trying to solve are, how do we help large enterprises get visibility into all of the agents that are running in their environment, understand what these agents have access to, and what are they actually accessing and doing within various systems, being able to block unintended or unwanted actions through predefined rules, but then also evolving those on an ongoing basis, and then helping organizations when an AI agent makes an unintended change or unwanted change in any of your environment's data applications, being able to quickly reverse that change. So that's the set of problems that we think are really important to solve in order to be able to really accelerate adoption of AI within the large enterprise.
I usually ask builders, what do they think about AGI? And for you, I have a double question. How do you feel about AGI? And related to what you were saying just now, what would a real undo button, reverse button for AGI look like?
So I think, what do I feel about AGI? My sense is it's an inevitability. It's a matter of when, not if it's going to happen. I think many things are going to change. Rubrik as a security and AI company, from a security landscape, it's going to be yet another tool that attackers are using. Already, attackers use AI to have highly personalized and realistic social engineering that's leading to more compromised identities. Certainly, AGI will help that, but I think it's going to completely change, even once attackers break in, how quickly they're able to compromise an organization and their data. And so just all of this is going to mean that the timeline for what happens and how quickly people get breached and the impact of that is much higher. It kind of goes back then to even whether it's a cyber attack or unwanted AI agent actions, how do we think about reversibility? So I think reversibility, it only makes the problem more acute. The solution to the problem is still probably not that different, which is being able to really, I talked earlier about how do you understand this whole timeline of what an agent actually did, having those guardrails in place. If you understand those, you have the guardrails. Yes, you're going to miss some stuff in the guardrails, but you can understand, you can look at all the actions and rank them essentially by their risk. And AGI will help with that to make the risk, understanding of that risk a lot better. A lot fewer false positives and false negatives, and really elevating the things that are the highest risk actions. And then it's about how do you have the integrations into all the different technologies that allow you to quickly understand what changed and go into that system and reverse that change. And that technology is that's what our bread and butter of what we do every day at Rubrik, is helping people recover, whether it's from cyber events, operational failures, and now unwanted AI agents. It's definitely not an easy problem to solve, because AI agents can be touching hundreds of different systems and devices, maybe even thousands, and to being able to monitor and track all of those, pick out the signal, and then be able to actually do the reversal really quickly. It's a really exciting and challenging opportunity.
But do you think this AGI system will act on itself, whatever decision it is, or it still will be hackers who decides?
Well, I think it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a great question. I think AGI, some version of it will be used by humans that are giving a very broad outcome. Whereas today with AI agents, you have to give a very specific outcome, right? With AGI, you could give a very broad outcome. So you could have, from a national security perspective, you could have a foreign government that's trying to wage war on another country give very broad outcomes for what it's looking for, and AGI will just go figure out how to execute on those outcomes. I do think that it's like, again, it's an accelerant of what's already happening. There'll probably be new vectors that AGI discovers of, hey, this is like an interesting vector of an attack. Or on the defense side as well, here's like an interesting vector of things that we can defend against both proactively and reactively. It's just accelerating the cat and mouse game that already exists from my perspective. Will we have AGI where it's like not even human directed? Now you're starting to talk about total science fiction world, which like is certainly possible, but then we might have a lot bigger problems on our hands than what we're talking about here today.
It's funny that builders just do not talk a lot about sci-fi. It's everything is, in the trenches, hands-on, we build it. So that's why I like to ask this question, because are we thinking about sentient systems, or it's just a technology that we need to deal with on a different scale?
I love sci-fi. I read sci-fi all the time. So it's stuff that I like to think about, but I don't know. I mean, it's as a builder, it's hard to predict that kind of future, which would probably mean a fair amount of social upheaval and a lot of different things that monumentally affect our day-to-day life.
Well, then my last question would be about books. What is the book that formed you or influenced you? And it can be a recent book or something from the childhood.
Like I said, I'm a big science fiction reader. There's not probably just one. I do feel like related to AI, the Isaac Asimov's I, Robot series was so influential to me growing up, because the thing that I love about sci-fi is that it helps you imagine so many alternative realities and what they could mean. And what I specifically love about Asimov books, not just I, Robot, the rest of his books, is that they're very philosophical as well. And so there's so much that it makes you think about in terms of ethics and how would you handle these very different kinds of situations that, it's hard to predict. They're very different, right? They're not situations that you're dealing with today. And I think, like, honestly, my love for sci-fi is what led me into being a builder, because I love thinking about the future. Now, some futures are probably too far ahead for what I need to think about today, but I find that so exciting, and trying to think about and predict what the future could look like, even in small increments, and then thinking about how we can innovate and solve those kinds of newer problems that are going to be emerging in new ways using the latest and greatest technology.
Thank you. That's fascinating. Is there any sci-fi book that you would love to be true in the future?
Most of the sci-fi books are quite dystopian. The great technology advancements come with a lot of negatives as well. I guess, like, if I could have one sci-fi technology, I would love teleportation.
Yeah, I would love that too.
That would be like the best thing, to be able to just like travel anywhere and without having to like spend the time traveling there, or getting to places like other planets without and other solar systems and all of that. That would be incredible.
Maybe that's something we will come to pretty soon. Thank you so much for this conversation. That was very insightful.
Thank you.